Eric Trump, Executive Vice President of the Trump Organization and second son of the 45th and possibly 47th President of the United States, Donald J. Trump. Thank you for sitting down with the Telegraph here at your golf course in Aberdeen, Scotland.
Well, welcome, Jamie.
Thank you very much. Just, I want to take you back to the other side of the Atlantic. Just 3 weeks ago in Butler, Pennsylvania, your father was speaking at a rally when a would-be assassin lying on a building not too far away took a shot and hit him.
Yeah.
Now, you were watching at home with your family. What was that like and what happened next?
Well, you thought they just killed your father, right? It's not exactly a nice moment, not one that I care to relive all that much. But yeah, you have two kids on your lap. They don't understand the evilness that often exists in the world, and they're naive and they're small, and you're sitting there as a family, beautiful. And I've sat on my father's lap, the very same way that they were sitting on mine that day, and it was pretty unthinkable, especially as you see blood come gushing down the side of the guy's face, and it was far too close. Should never have happened. It's far too close, and it truly is the evilness of politics. It's the evilness that exists in society. But yeah, no question, that was a scary moment. And exactly 48 hours later, I was a Republican delegate that effectively made him become the president of the Republican candidate for president of the United States. And so we saw these highs and lows in very short order, and it was a crazy day. I'll never forget that day as long as I live.
What was the first conversation you had with him afterwards?
Yeah, he called me from the hospital before an MRI, and let me know he was okay. He was gonna be fine, and we were worried. Listen, there were so many people around him. You didn't know if he had taken bullets to torso. You didn't know where the bullet entered in his head. Was it neck? Was it spine? Was it ear? All you saw was blood. You knew he'd been hit. That was a scary hour, to say the least. Communication wasn't great because obviously people were trying to rush him off to the hospital, and you're sitting there on pins and needles trying to figure out what had happened and if he was going to be okay.
And how do you think it's affected him subsequently? We saw him come out to a great fanfare at the convention afterwards, but you know him on that personal level. How do you think it's really affected him? Is he nervous around crowds now? Is he okay?
No, not at all. I mean, he's been in front of 100 crowds since, but there's probably humility that exists when your life could have been over and you realize you got spared by the luck of God, or pure beating the odds, or whatever you want to call it. But there's definitely humility that I think has formed, and it was far too close. I mean, another couple centimeters, another inch to the right, and he wouldn't be here right now.
And that humility, is this going to bring into what people are calling Trump 2.0? What do you think he's going to do differently if he does return to the White House?
Yeah, well, I think he's going to do a lot of things the same, to tell you the truth, right? Maybe in terms of persona, you might see a small shift, but at the end of the day, my father wants the West to be strong. He wants America to be the greatest superpower in the world. He wants to have the lowest taxes. He wants to have the lowest inflation. He wants to have the best employment rates in the country. He wants people to have upward mobility. He wants, the strongest military, but he doesn't want to have to use it. He doesn't want senseless wars all over the world. He doesn't want America to be funding senseless wars where you're seeing innocent children, innocent kids, lives taken away for absolutely nothing. I mean, watch the videos. Watch the trench warfare videos that are taking place in Ukraine right now. Look at these drone videos where some little drone flies above this 21-year-old's head and drops a hand grenade on their face. He doesn't want to see that happen anymore. It's got to end. It's enough.
And when you look at with the withdrawal from Afghanistan, for instance, America isn't projecting that strength on the world stage, and part of that is perhaps why Joe Biden dropped out not long after the assassination attempt. Was that the right thing for him to do?
Yeah, it was the right thing for our country. I mean, clearly he didn't have he didn't have the aptitude to do it. I'm not sure if he ever had the aptitude to do it, to tell you the truth, but certainly at his diminished state, he clearly didn't have the energy, nor the aptitude, nor the competence to do that. Frankly, Kamala's probably worse. I'm not sure if she definitely doesn't have the aptitude to do it. Her policies have been horrible. That administration has just been a wreck. And the whole country sees it. I mean, you see it, Jamie. The whole UK sees it. There's no one in the UK that could tell you that right now that the Western standing around the world is stronger than it was under Donald Trump. I mean, my father was a guy who was walking into North Korea and shaking hands with Kim Jong-un when the administration before said that we were going to have nuclear war. My father, he was tough, but he was respected. He was respected by all, and that's why we had peace in the world. And right now, we don't have peace in the world.
You touch upon the age issue, and a lot was made of Joe Biden's age and when he was running. But at the end of a second term, your father would be older than Joe Biden is now. What do you see as the differences that you can tell the voters that he will not be affected by these age-related problems or issues that Joe Biden has?
What I can tell you is Joe Biden was slow, couldn't move, couldn't think, couldn't speak, couldn't get a number out properly. across our lives, I'm sure this is true for you. You've seen people who are an old 80, and you've seen people who are extremely young 80, right? I mean, my father would go walk a golf course twice, no problem whatsoever. Then he'll go do 3 rallies, get back at 2 o'clock in the morning, and start work again at 6. And he has no problem doing that. I mean, he runs 25-year-old journalists into the ground who are sitting in a corner, sucking their thumbs, drinking Red Bull, and he's up doing his 8th rally of the day. I've never seen energy like the man has. He's remarkable. And I think the entire world realizes that there's a major difference between my father and Joe Biden. I don't think anybody could credibly say that they're even in the same boat. There's no one that works harder and moves more and does more rallies, and he's a remarkable human being. I've never seen that kind of strength and perseverance and kind of resilience and work ethic that you have with Donald Trump, and I think the entire world sees that there's a big difference between the two.
I think that's right. You talk about energy. The Democrats were dragging an anchor, it seemed, with Joe Biden. But Kamala Harris, doubtless, has driven some energy into that party and has galvanized voters and has galvanized donors as well. It's $200 million she's already raised. Does any of that concern you? Does any of that concern your campaign about just how quickly she's taken up that mantle?
Well, I think the media in the country realized they could no longer, pretend that Joe Biden was the modern day, Hemingway. That he's no longer the modern day Shakespeare. And literally, I mean, they had him on a mantle, but no one was buying it anymore. And so remember when Kamala Harris ran against him and the whole field in the Democratic primary in 2020, she didn't get 1% of the vote. I think she was the first candidate of all the primary, in the primaries to drop out. She got no delegates. She got less than 1% of the vote. No one liked her. No one liked her message. She wasn't doing it. It's really interesting to see the American media now propping her up as if she's, the second coming, as if she's really, but at the end of the day, the one thing we know, the media in our country does not like conservatives. They don't like the Republican Party whatsoever. And they'll do anything they can to prop up the person who's going to run against Donald Trump. And so whether or not the people of our country buy it or not, I don't think they will.
Well, running with Donald Trump is J.D. Vance. Now, he's been selected as the vice presidential nominee. What does he bring to the ticket? And for those of us who may have only seen clips on Twitter that have been going around, what is the real J.D. Vance like?
Yeah. My father has a great chemistry with him. J.D. Vance actually he wasn't a fan of my father at the very beginning when he first got into politics. And within a year, he realized everything my father was saying was right. And he came around in like a very big way and became my father's biggest ally. The media never likes to tell that story. I always like the people who don't like you, and then you make them believers because of competency and policy. And they have tremendous chemistry. J.D. Vance is a guy who carried the party for a long time to come. And I think it's going to be a great ticket. I really do.
And talking of the sort of new look Trump campaign and carrying the party forwards, at the RNC in Milwaukee, you were front and center, along with your brother, Don Jr. Your wife, Lara, is co-chair of the RNC, of the Republican National Committee, and she spoke at the convention as well.
Yeah.
But then your sister, Ivanka, and her husband, Jared Kushner, have taken a step back. They were both at the convention, along with Melania. But what do you see your role being in a future administration and the roles of those family members?
Yeah. Listen, I think time will tell. I'd be happy to have no role in politics, to tell you the truth. Politics is nasty, and I do very well on the stage, right? Listen, I introduced my father. I was the guy who pretty much introduced him for, maybe a reason. I don't think that was coincidental, but I don't have to be on that stage. I love our company. We have the best assets in the world. We're sitting at one of them right now at Trump Pepperdine. I'm very happy to do what I do every single day, and I'm very effective at doing that. We're building the best courses on planet Earth, including one right here. We have Turnberry. We have so many assets that you know so well. And we have those around the world. And I love what I do. I love building. I love real estate. If I was never in politics, I think that'd be totally fine. At the same time, I very much believe I could do politics, and I could do so in a very major way. I've developed a good voice. I think I understand what the country wants and needs. I just don't know if I'd hop into that arena, to tell you the truth. We've seen the worst of politics. We've seen the best of politics, but we've certainly seen the worst of it. It's nasty. It's cruel. It can be incredibly mean. And you really want to. You better know what you're getting into before entering that world, because I can tell you it's not a fun world.
So what does your wife think of this, Lara?
Well, listen, I think she feels the same way in a way. She's probably one of the most powerful Republican women in politics. Maybe the most. I mean, she's co-chair of the RNC, which is everything, and she's incredibly hardworking, and I think she's done a lot to modernize the party, as has my father over the last 8 years. She's done an unbelievable job. The fundraising numbers have never been better. polls have never been better. I mean, she's really done an unbelievable job. She's really transformed that organization, made them into a fighting machine, and I'm proud of her for that.
Good. You mentioned your role at the top of the Trump organization. As you say, we're here at one of your properties today, the Trump International Golf Links in Aberdeen, which this weekend is hosting the Stayshore PGA Senior Championship. You've got players like John Daly here, Colin Montgomery's hosting. There's a real stacked crowd, and there's a real atmosphere behind us. The UK clearly means a lot to you, to your organisation, to your family. Your grandmother was Scottish. Tell me about your plans for here and beyond, and the UK, and sort of what you hope to achieve in this country.
Yeah, we love the UK. As you said, my grandma's from here, but aside from that, grandma's from a lot of places. I mean, we just happen to love this country. We really do. We love the UK. We've got great property. Turnberry, very best in the world, rated #1 in virtually every magazine. I mean, it's probably the best golf course on earth. Trump Scotland, where we're staying right now, one of the very best golf courses on earth. I mean, spectacular. It's not 200 years old. We just rebuilt it, but it tops the charts of every Golf Digest, Links magazine, etc. And I'm building a second one right here, and putting tens and tens and tens of millions of dollars into this property, and you'll have the best 36 holes on planet Earth on this property, and we're really proud of it. And we put a lot of investment into the UK. We love Scotland, we love the UK, we love Ireland. We have great property, Trump Ireland, and we love this part of the world, and we're very loyal to it, and we put our money where our mouth is. And there will be no better ally when my father wins again in November, but there will be no better ally to the UK than Donald Trump.
Does part of the property expansion that you say mean bringing the Open back to a Trump property, whether that be here or whether that be Turnberry? Obviously, the RNA will soon have a new chief executive in Mark Darbin. What would be your message to him?
Yeah, we're ready. We've got the best property. Everybody, I think, knows that, right? I mean, I don't say that in a braggadocious way at all. Turnberry is so loved. It's so revered. I talk to people, thousands of people that go through Turnberry every year, and they say, hey, we've played all these courses, and Turnberry's just the best. And everybody says that. I mean, Gary Player, he was at Turnberry last week. He calls me up, hey, it's the best course on planet Earth. It is. And again, everybody knows that to be the case. And, it's a shame. Turnberry deserves it. We saved Turnberry, which was obviously a rota course, 4 rotas. And by the way, the very best. They all had just such great memories coming out of Turnberry. They're the most iconic, some of the most iconic images in kind of the Open history. And
the Jewel in the Sun would be 50 years, would be 2027.
Yeah, I mean, it's a great one. And politics shouldn't enter that conversation. And, all we want to do is have the best assets. And we want to love them, and we want to appreciate them. And we rebuilt that property. I mean, it had fallen into almost disrepair and under bad management. And now it's the best it's ever been. And it deserves it, but I don't dictate the timing. If they want to come back around, if they want to come and host it, we're going to put on the greatest golf tournament that they've ever seen. And if they don't, either way, we're going to safeguard an absolute icon and make sure that it's well kept, it's in the best hands, and that it's improved every single year. And it's the best of what Scotland and the UK represents.
And since you were last in the UK, there's been quite a large political shift. 14 years of Conservative government. It's been wiped out by Sir Keir Starmer's Labour Party. He came into power on the 5th of July last month. He spoke to your father for the first time after the assassination attempt, when not a lot of world leaders, as far as I know, did. That was their first ever conversation. What did your father make of that?
Yeah.
Was there a discussion that was had, and what would be their hopes for the sort of special relationship if he wins in November?
Yeah, I don't know about the conversation. Truthfully, I've been over here for a while. I haven't asked my father about that conversation, but listen, he's got amazing respect, tremendous respect for this part of the world. At the end of the day, as I said, he loves it, he appreciates it, and he'll be a great ally. And I think he can credibly speak, right? I mean, most U.S. presidents will fly into the UK, have a glass of tea, take the ceremonial, picture at Buckingham Palace, and then get the hell out of here. And, we've invested our lives in this country. We've invested our heart and soul. We've invested our own money. He's been here 100 times, meaning my father, and I've been here, just as many. So I think that goes a long way. And, so oftentimes I've seen politicians over the years, in the UK take shots at our family, and I'm sitting there saying, I never quite understood, it's amazing. You have a family that's invested hundreds of millions of dollars, outward investment into a country, should be celebrated, and yet you'll have politicians, that talk about creating jobs. They've never created a job in their life. Yet the people who are investing hundreds of millions of dollars into into an economy, they're taking shots at those individuals. It never made a lot of sense to me, but
some of those politicians are now in power. David Lammy, the Foreign Secretary, being one of those who has taken a lot of shots, some of which are still on his X or Twitter feed. Is it going to be difficult or more difficult to work with a Labour government who may come from a slightly ideological different standpoint to you?
Yeah, I don't know. That's getting into the political realm. I think love for country probably transcend, a nonsense voice that, probably wants to be clickbait, wants to make it into the Telegraph, or wants to make it onto the BBC because they say something crazy and something sensational. Hey, we have the same thing over the US. We have politicians who say dumb crap all the time to try and make headlines, excuse the language. And it is what it is. It's relevant to who we are, what we do, how we operate. And ultimately, it's largely, I think, irrelevant to the relationship that will ultimately be had, because your relationship is really with the people of a country, the nation as a whole. My father had so much respect for the late Queen. I had so much respect for the late Queen, the way we were hosted. We've known the King since, I have a picture with the King when I was 3 years old, and we have tremendous respect for the monarchy. We have tremendous respect for the country, and I think that kind of transcends what some politician that'll likely be out of there in 9 months anyway says or does. It just doesn't make a whole lot of difference.
The King also wrote to your father as well. That must have been quite touching for him.
Yeah,
given all that you've just said.
My mother knew him for years. My father knew him for years. My mother knew Diana very well, and my father and the Queen had so much respect for one another. I mean, they truly, I think, admired each other. My father certainly admired her, and obviously so did I. And again, the monarchy is beautiful. Sometimes it's put down by other countries around the world. I think it's something that should be totally celebrated. It's a unique thing that the UK has, and that relationship will not go away based on the comments of some irrelevant politician.
One Briton who is a friend of America, a friend of your family, and in fact he was born in America, is Boris Johnson.
Sure.
But since leaving office, he's sort of appeared to be a man who's in search of a role in public life. What would you like to see him do? I mean, I know the ambassadorship role is coming up at some point. Is there anything that he could be useful for?
Yeah, Jamie, you know the good thing about me? I run a great company. I run the best hotels in the world. I don't make the appointment spots.
Behind the bar.
What's that?
You want him behind the bar.
By the way, he'd probably be great in there. He'd have a great time. But he, listen, Boris and my father had a special relationship for a long time. That was a special bond, I think, between the UK and obviously, the United States. And, I think there's a lot of mutual respect there. And that's a wonderful thing to see. What he ultimately does in time, that's not my call. That's not my call. But I do know that there's mutual love and respect, and that's nice when you have that. I think we need a lot more love and respect between countries, because right now it doesn't feel like there's any relationships with any foreign leaders. It kind of seems like everybody's on their own little island, and I'm not sure if that's healthy.
And lastly, your one of your other British friends is the newly elected Member of Parliament for Clapton, Nigel Farage. And he said he wanted to come to America before to help with the 2024 campaign. Were you impressed by what his party was able to do to come from absolutely nothing to generate 4 million votes in the election and now have a real voice in Parliament, coming from a side that completely triangulated the Tory party at the last election?
Yeah. Well, I think you've seen that pendulum swing all around the world, right? You certainly saw it in France. You've seen it in Brazil. You've seen it in countries all over the world where the pendulum was over here and it swang back because the insanity was getting crazy, right? And I think there were a lot of issues that drove that, but illegal immigration was one of them. I think right now the whole world's being galvanized, frankly, by this male boxer in women's sports, right? I mean, that's galvanizing a lot of people saying, hey, guess what? Like, this doesn't make a whole lot of sense, none of this seems crazy. And, when you see people who are losing jobs, based on people who are coming in from other countries, taking those jobs and taking workforce housing and depressing wages and a lot of other things, a lot of people sit back and say, this doesn't make a whole lot of sense. And so you've seen the pendulum swing, not just here, but all around the world. So now it doesn't surprise me at all. And I've known Nigel for years. He's always been a wonderful man to me. We've done a couple great interviews together, but I knew him even before he was on the air. And no, he certainly has a following. And I think that following is made up of a lot of people that, no different than my father, are just fed up with the direction of country, the fact that government usually doesn't work for people, actually only holds people back. And Nigel is a wonderful guy to us and our family, and wish him the best, obviously.
Brilliant. Well, Eric Trump, thank you very much for sitting down with us, and thank you very much for having us.
Awesome. Thanks, Jamie.
Thank you.